All right, welcome back. What we're going to do here is we're going to utilize Oracle VirtualBox, and we will install Windows 10 for the very first time. We'll go through this step by step because it is different from VMware Player and VMware Workstation. It's done this way because it's a different manufacturer. So we're going to be utilizing Oracle VirtualBox 6.1.12 version, all that stuff. So the very first thing we're going to need to do is create a new virtual machine. We'll do so by clicking the little banner or little award icon that says new. We'll create a name, call it Forensics VM. We'll need to change our operating system from Linux to Windows, but we do have a few more options as well. So if you ever need to use it for other things, we can do that as well. We'll look for Windows 10. We're not looking for 32-bit. We're looking for 64-bit because that's the version I chose when I downloaded it earlier. We'll choose next. Now the version of memory here is very important to pay attention to because if your computer has 8 gigs and you choose 8 gigs of virtualized RAM, your host operating system and your virtual machine is going to fight over those 8 gigs. It's going to make your computer run slow. It'll make it be difficult. It may lock up and you may be forced to reboot and change your settings anyway. So think ahead. Remember the minimum size for the operating system is 1 gig. Another difference between player and workstation is that it doesn't show you, it doesn't recognize the Windows 10 because it hasn't been shown Windows 10. It's just been told Windows 10. We'll have to show it later and we'll do that here in a few steps. So change our memory to, let's do 4028 for 4 gigs of RAM. I have 32 gigs of RAM on my Dell here. So I have enough to spare over the 4 gigs that we're giving it virtually. We'll leave everything as default, create the virtual disk now. We'll leave it a virtual disk image, VDI. We'll leave it as dynamically allocated. And there's where our location of the virtual machine will be in VirtualBox VMs, Forensics VM, Forensic VM VDI. That's our file for this virtual disk VDI. Notice the drive space is 50. We'll change it to 60 just to be go back, select dynamic. So if you highlight too much of it, it'll go away. So it's a new little 60 gigs is what we wanted to set it at because that's the default size for player and workstation. We just want to sort of keep things on a level playing field there. If you delete the GB, hit escape, it'll choose you to go back and we'll just basically create it again. We left everything as default. So now that our forensics virtual machine has been created, the settings for it has been created in VirtualBox. The next thing we want to do is tell it what to load because we never had that option to put in that Windows ISO. That's the Windows disk that you're going to set in the virtual machine to tell it what to install. And as you can see, the boot order is floppy, optical, and then hard drive. So we have no floppy drive, but storage, we have the SATA controller 0 and 1, or port 0 and 1, I should say. The optical drive is empty. This is where we're going to take our Windows ISO and plop it in there. We're going to choose a disk file, the same version here, the 5 gig version. We're doing this to make it a little easier on the install. If we choose an older file, we'll have to do a lot of updating as the install progresses, and it takes a little bit longer. So choosing the newer ISO is a little bit more beneficial. We'll choose open, and now notice it's Windows 10 2004, Windows English x86, or x64, sorry, and we'll start our virtualization, which will load the virtual machine, and the virtual machine will go through a post similar to a physical machine. After the post happens, and we can just get rid of anything that pops up here. It's about keyboard and mouse virtualization and how that works. For the most part, we really don't need to pay much attention to it. It's just in the way, and we're going to make it a little cleaner. Move this towards the center here. All right, and we're about to see the Windows installation process for the very first time now. English is selected because it's an English language down ISO that we got. We're going to choose install now. And the first thing it's going to ask us for is to activate Windows. We don't have to worry about this. Windows gives you, I think it's either 90 days or 180 days as a trial version. For the most part, we really don't matter because we're using this as our sandbox or a way to test out our forensic techniques. So we're going to say, I don't have a product key. If you do have a product key, feel free to enter it. It's not going to hurt anything. And we're going to choose Windows 10 Pro because that's the version I specifically downloaded. There are other versions here that you can choose from, but Pro is better. So move on to next. Accept the licensing agreement. Click next. We're going to choose custom install Windows only. If you need to repair or update or upgrade, you'll choose that version, but we're going to do an install. So we need to choose the custom. If you choose the other one, you'll get a little message saying it can't install, of which we know that we have 60 gigs that we selected earlier during our virtual machine configuration stage using the VirtualBox software. Drive 0, there's 60 gigs unallocated space. You don't need to do anything except make sure it's selected and click next. And at which point in time it'll go through the process of installation, getting the files ready, copying files, installing features, installing updates, and then you'll be presented with a desktop, at which point in time you are ready to go, you're set. So after which everything should be set, whether you chose player, workstation, or VirtualBox, you end up with a virtual machine that is ready for Windows and able to use Windows.